Let's take a look at adjusting the platen. It's very important that the platen is the same distance away from the print head everywhere. So we need to check to make sure that these are level. And you don't want to take anything and measure from the base to the top of the platen. It's much more important that the platen itself be level and the same distance relative to the print head itself. So we are going to measure everything from the print head. Now, in order to do this, first off, your platens have these little protective coverings on them. I've removed 3 of them already, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove this last one. It just peels away. This is just to prevent it from getting scratched when they're assembling these. Okay, and then we'll just discard that. Now, for this procedure, we're going to need either a crescent wrench or an adjustable wrench. We need a 10 millimeter box wrench. And we need something to use as a gauge. Now, the height of this is completely arbitrary. So whether you're using a stack of quarters, I've got 3 quarters here, a stack of nickels, an Allen wrench, it really doesn't matter. What's important is that we use the same gauge to check each corner of the platen. Now, I happen to be adjusting a 4-up, 2-up, 1-up platen system, which is the standard platen that comes with the Viper2, but it could be a sleeve platen or one of the other optional platens. They're all adjusted the same way. The first thing we're going to do is remove the cover, because I'm going to need to be able to move the print head. So we'll take the cover off. And then after removing the cover, what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to have the machine power off and then power back on again, but I need the head unlocked because I need to be able to use my bed up, bed down adjustments so that I can set the height in one of the corners. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to power the machine on. The print head is going to move out here to the open area. At that point in time, I'm going to hit the emergency stop button. Now, at that point in time, the emergency stop will have tripped the power, but there's still power coming to the control panel. So I'm going to power the control panel off, and then I'm going to release the emergency stop button. What that's going to do is that's going to keep the print head released, but make it so that the power button here for my bed up, bed down adjustments are live. So let's take a look at this procedure. We're going to start by powering on. It'll take a moment to power up. Of course, we've plugged in the power to our UPS. We've also plugged the power cord and turned the main power switch on in the back of the machine. So now the print head is starting to move a little bit back and forth. The pressure pump is kicking on. Now the print head is out here. I hit the emergency stop button and move the print head over. Now, once I do that, I'm going to power off the control panel. And now I'm going to release the emergency stop button. Now you are going to get an error message during this, okay? So don't be concerned about that. So now my bed up, bed down buttons are now working. Now, before we begin this, let me show you how we're actually making this adjustment. You'll notice that these are floating, okay? So down at the bottom here, there's a nut. And by loosening that nut, it will raise this corner. By tightening that nut, it will pull this corner down. And that's how we adjust the height of each corner of the platen. Okay, so we're going to start by lowering the bed. So I'm going to hit the bed down button a little bit. And now I'm going to bring the printhead over, and I'm going to manually push in the platen by hand. And I'm going to set a stack. I happen to be using 3/4. Again, the height is completely arbitrary. You just have to make sure that we use the same device to check the height everywhere. Now, I don't want to look at the print surface. Okay, that's where you see that silver edge. That's the printhead itself. I'm using the little plastic square to the left of the printhead. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. This has to go in a little bit further. And now I'm going to just raise the bed. And right now, I just want to get it close. Now I'm going to move the head away from that stack a little bit. So it's next to it, but the stack is not under it. And I'm going to raise the bed, and I'm going to check it. Okay, and I am just barely touching that top quarter. So I'm going to drop that bed down just a touch, and I'm going to check it again. And now it is just coming over it. I'm going to hit the up button, and look at that. I'm just barely touching that top quarter. Okay, so that's the height that I'm using, where I'm barely touching that top quarter. Perfect. Okay, so now the next thing, I don't want to have this bed change height. So I need to make sure I turn off the gap height sensor. To do that, we're going to take our bed up, bed down buttons, and you'll notice right now the gap light is green, but if I hold the two simultaneously, that defeats the gap sensor, and we know that when that light turns amber in color. So now, even if I break the height sensor beam, it's not going to change height. So now what I'm going to do is now we're going to check the other quarters of the platen. So now I did the back left-hand corner. Now I'm checking the back right-hand corner. And I'm just barely touching that quarter. That's perfect. Now I'm going to check the next corner. I'm going to push the platen in further, set my stack of quarters back to the front right-hand corner, and check the height. Now that's a little low, okay, because I'm going over the top. I'm not pushing the stack. So that's a little out of adjustment. So we're going to pull this out. And I've got my 10mm box wrench in here. And I need this corner to go up a little bit. So I need to loosen this a little bit, which would be to turn this nut towards me. So I'm going to loosen that nut a little bit. And now we'll put it back in. And we will check it again. And now I'm just starting to touch the stack of quarters. Beautiful. And now I'll come to this corner and I'll check it. And again, I'm clearing the quarters, so that's no good. I want to be just touching the stack. So we'll pull it out. We'll make a little adjustment. Send it back in. And check the height again. And there we are. We're just pushing that corner. So now I know all four corners of that platen are the same distance away from the printhead. I now repeat the process for all the other platens that we may have. Notice as we're doing this, we make sure we do this before we put ink in the printer, because we don't want to have ink in the printhead as we're doing this, because that head has been exposed for a while, and that would allow the head to dry out and possibly start clogging. So we want to make sure we level our platens before we put ink in the printer. Now that I've done that, I want to make sure that I turn my gap sensors back on. So we do just the opposite. We hold the two buttons simultaneously again. The light is back green, which means we now have the gap sensors turned on. Now I'm going to power the machine up, and that's going to dock the printhead, and then once it's docked, I'm going to power off again until we're ready to put ink in the printer.